Where y'all was going?
Atlanta.
Good evening. I know how this goes already. I already know how this goes, right? I've been a college student, so I get it. Y'all are definitely not in here to be the most dedicated ever. Y'all in here to do what y'all have to do. But I want to take a little bit of your time and hopefully provide some value. So, my name is Greg Fassit. I am a core New Orleanian, born and raised here. I went to New Orleans Public High School. Navigated New Orleans at a time where it was really interesting, dynamic. One of the most complex places in the United States of America at the time. New Orleans was the murder capital of the United States. So the reason why I say that is because a lot of what I learned was given to me through my environment, right? Not an excuse, but a reality, right? Telling you a little bit about who I am. I navigated an environment where most of my best friends at the time were murdered before I was 13. Grew up in a single parent household. I would ultimately say basically at or below the poverty line, and experienced things that as a young black boy I didn't know weren't normal, right? In saying that, one of the things that I found on my journey was sports as an escape. I was a late bloomer. I didn't start playing sports until I was a junior in high school, ultimately running away from some things that I felt like would keep me away from being my best self, and I stumbled into football. And one of the things that's really important to me is thinking about having a vision, having a plan, having somebody that can help lead you somewhere. So for me, that was a high school football coach, right? That high school football coach spoke life into me, saw some things in me that I didn't see in myself, encouraged me to come out and try out and play sports. In saying that, the thing that I said back then, New Orleans was really more about music than anything else. So band culture was huge. I was in a band. And I'm like, man, I'm not stopping in a band to go play football because y'all lose, and I don't lose at nothing I do. So it's like, hey, I'll make a deal with you. If we get a winning season, you have to come try out. I said, bet. Next year, they had a winning season. I tried out. As a junior, I made the team. I became a starter. It's not so much about me, but it's about where this took me. That opportunity to listen, be humble, and follow the vision of someone else gave me an opportunity to have a full scholarship to go play football at Grambling State University. Went there, majored in criminal justice, wanted to be an attorney, played 4 years of football. I graduated college with my bachelor's in 2 years, 11 months while being an All-American and a scholar athlete on the football team because I had a plan, right? Having that plan gave me a vision and helped me navigate through the journey of college. We'll talk about that a little bit. For me, single parent household, as I mentioned, my mom couldn't afford for me to go to college. That just wasn't a thing. So I knew hands down, if I didn't do something that would give me an opportunity to get there for free, I wasn't going. Which also meant that I wasn't going to escape the New Orleans environment that I was accustomed to. Which also meant that I'd probably be a statistic, not the good ones, but the bad ones, right? So in saying that, when I got to school, it was very important for me to stay on track, to tap in. So when you think about what we'll talk about today, this whole becoming the champion of your life, I started back with the early upbringing of the New Orleans journey up to going to college, making the decision to tap in and do that, and then maximizing the time in college. From that opportunity playing football in college, I became an undrafted free agent to the NFL, played 5 seasons, most notably with the New Orleans Saints, and won a Super Bowl championship for the team of the very city I was born in. Now, the irony about this, when I say becoming a champion of your life, the champion you tag is because a lot of people, when they hear the word champion, they think about sports. It's just what it is. It's some type of accolade. But I want to pause for a minute and literally pose this question to you. If I said, what does the champion you look like? Can you answer that? You said, I think I saw you said, I won't hear it. What does the champion you look like? It's a safe space.
I would say a successful business owner and like well off in my career.
Love it. Love it. We're gonna dive into that. Successful business owner, well off into her career. Anybody else? What does the championship version of you look like? Because I'll tell you this, the one, and that's Patrick Mahomes, clearly that ain't me, but the one that, the vision I had of champion me, it wasn't that. It was never football. Like I didn't grow up saying like, oh, I'll be some type of, that was never it. It was something totally different. So sometimes we know it, sometimes we learn it, and sometimes we learn it and it changes. But I would love to hear, anybody else could tell me what does the championship version of yourself look like? What's up?
You never have to like
feel like I'm living like paycheck to paycheck, just being able to, if I want something, I can get it, or if, you know, I'm in a dire need, like need surgery or something, I don't have to worry about, oh, it's gonna be this big of a medical bill. Just being able to live without stress, financial stress.
Financial freedom. Love it. Cool. So if you think about that championship version of yourself, you know, for those who didn't answer, you may already have the answer. If you don't, it's a great opportunity to start thinking about it. I'm not sure what the room is as far as your classifications, freshman, sophomore, junior, I'm not sure. But are there any freshmen in the room? Okay, any sophomores? Juniors? Okay, all right. Now I know how to cook. So, this little image, when we talk about becoming a champion in your life, ultimately my goal for you is by the end of this session, you will have some tools that will help you see things a little bit more clearly. I don't promise to be some magician. I don't promise to be a wizard that knows it all. I will tell you I've experienced some things in life that's humbled me and strengthened me, right? So ultimately, the reason I pose that question is because as we talk throughout this session, I just want you to reflect on that question and continue to build a vision. So one of the things that I would tell you is champions do not stumble and accidentally fall their way into success. Like real talk, how many people you know that just stumbled their way into a bag? A big one?
No, I just feel like they be having life kind of just work out synonymous.
I'll tell you this, I've never met a millionaire that accidentally became one outside of the lottery. Not even an accident, it's intentional play, right? But the reality is champions don't stumble in success by accident. You have to have a clear vision for whatever you want to go and take deliberate actions. So one of the things we'll talk about is goal setting. And it's not that I think that you have never heard about the goal setting concept. It's not that I think that it's earth shattering, but I do want to break down some things I learned in my career after sports, not just sports, but life after sports. So I didn't really talk about that, but life after sports, I transitioned from football and I went into business. And I worked for a Fortune 50 company for over a decade, becoming a senior leader, leading over 3,000 individuals and being responsible for almost $700 million in annual revenue. The reason that that's critical is because I learned a lot more about the big picture of goals and the difference between short-term and long-term, right? So one of the things that we know to be true, I'm all about facts, I like that. One of the things that we know to be true is that only 3% of people actually write down their goals. So we talked about that champion version of yourself. The next question I would pose to you is, have you written down the goals that aligns with the championship vision that you have for yourself? Now, you don't have to tell me, but I do want you to think about it. And when I say written down the goals, I mean truly put it on paper, not like it's in my head, because that one doesn't count. They say most specifically, a goal is only a goal when it is visible. If you cannot see it physically somewhere, it does not exist. So we'll build on that, right? When you think about the goal, those are often the things we want to achieve most. So first and foremost, you know it's going to guide every decision and action that you take. But it's a vision that by itself will not do anything, but you have to start there. You gotta have a vision, the champion version of yourself. You gotta see it first, and then you can do something with it, right? So we have to clearly define and articulate what does that look like. Now, I think you said you basically want to get to a point where the championship version of self is where you don't have to really think about money, right? Or you don't feel uncomfortable. Here's what I'll tell you. My friends, people I've met over the years, business associates, all the things. Most of them have said that one of their goals is to be a millionaire. Right? I know you mentioned being successful and well off into your career, right? What does that look like? Does well off mean 100,000? Does it mean 150? Does it mean 200?
Why cap yourself?
Why cap yourself? That's beautiful. But watch this. If you don't have a target, you don't know what you're shooting at. So the reason why I said, like a lot of my friends and people I've come across to say, like, I want to be a millionaire, and we think that that's a goal. This is why we actually have this conversation. It sounds like it, but it's really not. It's a wish list, it's a want. Because as soon as I start to ask, great, walk me through how you envision accomplishing that specific goal and the steps that's gonna take you there, most of them can't respond to that. So it's really just a wish list. So one of the things that we wanna talk about is how to be very intentional about exactly what it is you want. Let's be real, we live in a culture now that everything is about manifestation, see it and believe it. So if you don't have a clear picture of what you want to become, then it's gonna be really hard to get there. So when you define that vision and you look at the short-term goal versus the long-term goal, they gotta be in conjunction. So what does that really look like? It says, hey, if I want to be a millionaire, then I actually have to have a clear vision of when is that? Is that at 60 years old? Is it at 40? Is it at 30? That's when the specificity kicks in. So when we say being intentional, one of the things we will talk through is what a goal should look like, and it's called SMART goals. But first we look at short-term versus long-term. You want to break down your vision into achievable milestones. So if you haven't right now, right, there's a lot of juniors in here, let me know if one of your goals was to graduate. When you first stepped on campus, like one of your goals was like, hey, I want to graduate. Great. And you're almost there. The question I would add to that about clarity, because it's going to take you to your profession. When you set that goal, all jokes, I really want to know, I want you to be vulnerable. What did that look like to you when you say I want to graduate? Walking across the stage. I don't want you to think I'm being facetious or picking on you. But when you walk across the stage, what do you look like? Are you smiling? Right? Are you excited? Is there people in there cheering you on? Like, you want to be very specific because you're creating a future version of yourself. And then you can walk in that version. Did you have a specific grade point average you wanted to graduate with? Do you have a specific internship you wanted to experience before graduating? Do you have a specific company you may want to work for upon graduating? You see, I'm getting a little bit more granular. So the long-term goal is, yo, I'm coming to Dillard, I'm a freshman, this is the old you, right? I'm a freshman and I want to graduate. You also would add to that, I want to work in XYZ field. I also would like to make X amount starting out. That's where you start to cast your long-term visions. And the reason why I always look long-term first is because you want to reverse engineer. You want to work your way back. So when I know exactly where I want to go for the most part, then I can break down, well, the first step to me getting to this graduation point is I got to select the right amount of courses and put it in a time frame for when I expect to graduate. And then I have to be intentional with what my grade point average is going to be, which means I have to know exactly what my grade should look like from course to course to course. In addition to that, I have to break down what my studying and all of those things are going to look like. So when you think long-term is the $1 million concept that says I want to be a millionaire. But if I don't say I want to graduate in 4 years, then I'm not being as intentional as I want to. The same way, if I don't say I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 40, I'm giving it some specificity that makes time have to work in real life. So the next phase of this is SMART goals, right? So you want to think about SMART from the standpoint that says specific, measurable, achievable, relevant or realistic, and then time bound. So that's why I was asking some of those questions. We already talked about the clearly defining part. We were thinking about what it is you want to achieve. Some of it has to be challenging, but also realistic. The reason I threw the $1 million play out there is because it's just a number everybody uses. You hear people talk about money and $1 million is the one. Let's be real. Does anybody know the percentage of individuals in America that make 6 figures? Take a guess. You don't have to be exact. It's all good. It's not this. Not this.
6%. 6%.
A little bit too high.
Hi.
High. See that? So what I'm trying to illustrate this achievement part. See how that caught you by surprise? Like, high. Yes. It's less than 6%. Watch this. Between 7 to 9% of American households make 6 figures or above. Household, AKA myself, a spouse, etc. Individuals, less than 4%.
Crazy. Crazy.
But everybody will make it seem like $1 million is the easiest thing that you can go after. So we talk about goals, not saying that you can't. Everybody can do whatever it is that you put your mind to, but we want to be realistic in what those goals look like to attain them and work towards them. We want to make sure that it's relevant, it aligns with the objectives you have in your life, especially from a value standpoint, and as I mentioned, the time part. So setting that specific deadline and time is going to help you create urgency around your goals. So one of the reasons you showed up today is because there was something tied to it, right? You have a goal that you're trying to accomplish, and we'll talk about this on the next slide, and there's some things you will have to do to get to that goal, right? Tonight is one of those things for you. So, in saying that, if there's anything up to this point, because we're going to talk about how to craft this successful playbook around goals. I use a lot of sports analogies, because I'll tell you, even in corporate America, when people get in their feelings and things start getting uncomfortable, for some reason, sports is that one place you can talk about that makes things a little bit more relative, that makes people more open to discussing the same themes and topics. So when we think about the sports play, just as a football team needs a solid game plan to win, you absolutely need a strategic playbook to achieve your goals. So when we think about the professional landscape and where you all may want to go, the research shows that people who create a detailed action plan are 2 to 3 times more likely to stick to their goals. Right? We already talked about less than 4% of people actually write down their goals. When you write down your goals, you are actually statistically 8 times more likely to accomplish them. And then when you put together a detailed action plan, you are 2 to 3 times more likely to stick to your goals. So when we break down this goal, and we think about SMART, we want to get micro. One of the coolest things that you can do is think about where you want to be in your future and start to work on your future self in the now. So let me tell you what that looked like for me in real time. Not because I think I was smart, but I was more so driven to do some things and get to the bag. So when I went to school, when I got to college, I sat with my guidance counselor, I talked about my long-term goal. Hey, I want to graduate as fast as I can while the school is paying for my studies so that while I'm playing football, I can get into graduate school on the school's dime instead of me trying to fund it with a loan. In order to do that, I will have to accelerate the amount of time I spend taking courses, right? So that's the long-term part. Then I gotta break this down. What's gonna be the plan? The plan for me was, I'm a football player, I have to be at summer school no matter what. So if I'm gonna be at summer school no matter what, because I'm a football player, what's the maximum amount of hours I can take? And then what's the maximum amount of hours I can take as a freshman, as a second semester freshman, as a first semester sophomore? And as we walked through that plan and it escalated, hey, by the time you are a second semester sophomore, you can submit approval to your coach and to the dean for you to take 21 hours from that point on. Fall, spring, and 16 hours in the summer. Cool. That's what I did. So I maxed out that workload, thinking about how to break down my goals into smaller, manageable tasks, which means I'm looking semester at a time now, right? I'm looking at 18 hours this semester and then 21 hours next semester and so on and so forth, to where I was able to leverage those little breakdowns to get to a point to say, hey, I arrived on campus and 2 years and 11 months later, I'm walking across the stage. Because the plan that I had was breaking those goals down into a smaller, incremental approach. And then we'll talk about how to prioritize and how to time plan. So, if you currently have a goal that you have not written down, we said it's not a goal yet. We also said, once you write down that goal, you want to make it as specific and clear as possible. And then once you do that, we have to put together a plan. So, one of the things about putting together that plan is this concept that talks about your habits. Because the plan is something that you say that you're gonna do. One of my mentors taught me this. He was like, hey, what is commitment to you? And so if I ask that question, anybody in the room can answer it. I'm always open to learning. What does commitment mean to you? right? Because we set a goal, we got a vision, but I think we are educated enough to know if we don't have any commitment behind that, it's not coming to life. So what does commitment mean to you in your own words?
Sticking to.
Mine goes about dedication.
Absolutely. Without dedication, ain't gonna happen.
I was gonna say sticking to something that you said you would do.
That's pretty close to what my mentor said. He said, commitment is to do what you said you would do long after the mood that you said it in has left. AKA, your goals don't care about your feelings, right? Like your commitment shouldn't be dictated by your emotions or your life circumstances. Now, I say that with all humility, because the things that I mentioned about like, hey, I graduated from college in 2 years, 11 months, I was an All-American football player. The stuff that I didn't mention is at one point I was homeless sleeping in my car. The other part that I didn't mention is that at one point I was injured and didn't know if I was going to play football again. Right? Like adversity is going to absolutely come up. That's why it's important to have the vision set and to have a plan in place so that when things aren't going well, you can stick to your fundamentals instead of depending on your feelings. Right? So when you think about that commitment play, you mentioned mind over matter. So you'll have to be committed. But the funny thing about commitment, it requires some different things. It's not just about what we say, it's ultimately about what we do. So when you think about this little journey that we're going on, the power of habits is huge. I realized this playing in the NFL, which stands for, anybody know what the NFL stands for? Cute.
Not for long.
Not for long. The NFL stands for not for long. Okay? So, why does it stand for not for long?
You gonna get too old?
CTE.
What do you think the average, so like we're talking about careers, you say you want to get to a point in your business, career, where you're doing your thing, you well off, right? If I asked you, how long do you envision yourself being in that career, what would you say? Rough number. Okay. Remember, we're talking about goals, and we said our goals have to be SMART goals. Those SMART goals have to be specific. So if you say retire, give me an age. Okay. So let's just say, sounds like 25, 30 years, right? Career? What do you think the average NFL career is? Time span?
10, maybe 12.
10, 12,
4.
3.3 years.
4 years.
Something like that.
2.9.
Oh,
Okay.
2.9 years. So, the funny thing about that journey, and the thing that I learned throughout that journey, is that many times we set these goals, like we got these visions, like all of the things, whether it's how much money you want to make, when you want to graduate, the career you want to have, all that stuff is great. And we talked about what's going to be required to make it happen. You got to have a plan. But even once you set the plan, you have to be committed. And we say we can't allow our feelings to supersede what we're supposed to do. Here's the part that really got me, that I realized. Because again, I'm talking through some of the highlights of like, hey, this is how life went. But I also was real enough to tell you in a vulnerable way, you will face adversity. So when I say, hey, I'm a person that can tell you that historically, I am the first NFL player to ever win a Super Bowl championship playing for the native team of the city he was born. And I'm like, man, that makes you feel really good. But the part that you don't know, I was cut 3 times before that happened. So my career started and stopped, and started again and stopped, and started again and stopped. So if I dealt with my career and my goals based on my feelings, I would fail. Because I can't tell you how many times I wanted to say, you know what, I'm over this. The emotional wear and tear, physical wear and tear. So we say commitment means what? Now, here's where I'm going with the habit play. What I realized is that a lot of times we think we get to choose our destination and choose our outcomes. But you know what the reality is? You get to choose the decisions, you get to choose your actions, but your habits will choose your outcomes. Your habits will choose your outcomes. Because we are ultimately what we repeatedly do. That's why they say we creatures of habit. So, a really, really, really pivotal play is to build the right habits. So when you think about the goals, the reason why I actually want to talk about goal setting and kind of reshaping some of these things that we look at is because the goals are great. But the truth is, you don't even have to worry about the goals. Once you set it, I promise you, you set the goal, that's the beginning, you put the plan in place, but once you start to build the habits, you focus on the habits will take care of the goals. So some great habits and things to think about. Bruce Lee, I don't know if y'all know Bruce Lee, he's an old kung fu guy, whatever, right? But Bruce Lee had a quote that stuck with me. He says, I fear not the guy who has practiced 10,000 kicks one time. Who I fear is he who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And so for me, that resonated simply because he was talking about repetition. And the reality is, when you talk about commitment, let me tell you something. I can't even count how many times professionally I had to do some things that I didn't want to do. And then I had to become comfortable doing those things that made me uncomfortable. And then do them so frequently that they became second nature. I.e., if you're thinking about professional sports, there's certain things you see on the football field that you study, that become aware when you see people moving and all those great things. Awesome. But if you're sitting out there trying to think the entire time, you will not be successful. A lot of what you do has to be habit. And I will tell you, in life, it's the exact same way. How you think, how you speak, how you receive communication, how you listen, how you're able to stay engaged when you don't have the energy or you don't feel like it. All of those things are habits. They're things that we learn, right? So I would tell you, when you are looking to build your habits, you are setting yourself up for automatic success. Because starting small, even a 1% improvement each day compounds to a 37% improvement over a year, right? So a lot of times we think the habit is, I have to totally transform and become a new person. It's not true. If you lean into the right habits, you want to make it as simplistic as possible. What's that mean? You ever heard somebody say that they have a goal? We'll go back to that. They have a goal, and let's say it's a fitness goal. It's like, hey, I have this fitness goal, and I want to get into shape. The first thing I would challenge is, what is get into shape? Because we're saying that's a goal, but if the goal's not specific, how do you know if you need it or not? So if we say I want to get into shape, it's relative. Hey, I want to, for me, I might say, hey, I want to add 5 pounds in the next 30 days. That may be a goal. Now, here's the funny part about habits and the plan. I cannot say I want to add 5 pounds in 30 days of muscle, but then when you audit my gym expectations, I don't have no plans of going to the gym for the next 2 weeks. So when we talk about your habits, the real play is saying, as I asked some of my friends in the past, hey, you say you want to be a millionaire, that's your goal, but what's your plan? Hey, my plan is I'm going to start a business and I'm going to ultimately make a lot of money. That's great. What's your product? What's your service? What's your good? Who's your consumer? What skills do you possess that's going to help you do that? It's not to be critical to tear down, it's to actually create clarity on what it is that we want to do. So the easiest thing for you to do, if you said, hey, I want to lose 5 pounds in 30 days, the first thing we want to think about is how do we make it easy? 1, time blocking. So if you have a goal that says you want to lose 5 pounds in 30 days, then I would tell you, specify exactly what exercises you want to do to bring that to life. And then say to yourself, what time blocks are you going to do those things? Because as long as you can make it automatic, it's going to come to life. So if you set out to do something, you create the time for it, you are consistently doing it on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be a part of your core life. The best thing I can suggest to you, once you set that, is to be in a position where you can track your progress and celebrate your wins. I can't tell you how often we put some things in place that we don't visit. So again, milestones and progress tracking is critical. I will tell you there's not a single job in corporate America that you can work that doesn't have what they call KPIs. Anybody familiar with that term?
The kudos points. The kudos points.
No, not necessarily kudos points. It's a slightly different term. Anybody else? Key performance indicators. Okay. So, anybody can raise their hand. I want to learn so I can make sure that this is relative. If I ask you, once you are graduated, what is it that you want to do specifically? What would you say?
So when I graduate, I want to work at the Juvenile Justice Center as a case manager, and then in 9 months, I see myself going into grad school at at San Luis State University, and then in 5 years, I see myself starting my career as a forensic psychologist.
I love how you took that short-term, long-term, specific, and then like the pathway to get there. Anybody else? Like, what do you want to do professionally? Like, what do you see? What is it gonna be? And there's a reason I'm asking this. Because I know you're not in school just to be in school, right? Okay. What is it that you want to do? Yes, you specifically.
When I graduate, I plan to go to, I don't know what college yet, for higher education, put on a master's in law school. But, yeah, that's what I have.
What kind of attorney?
Don't know.
That was my first dream. That was my first goal. That was my first vision. I wanted to be a prosecuting attorney. I feel like I had so much in the city for so many years. Wow. So I want to do some things that I can see from right. Here's why I asked that question. There's not a single profession you will ever go into that there will not be key performance indicators. I.e., if you are a prosecuting attorney, what's your win-loss rate? Right? How many of those that you are looking to convict are actually convicted for the crimes that they were supposedly brought before you to get to them? Your defense attorney, opposite. Right? If you are in some type of psychology play, what's the amount of clients, I don't say patients, of clients that you have that report an improvement? How long do they stay with you in your practice? How frequently do they visit? All of those things are measurable. So the reason I'm saying that like that is because let me tell you a real fact. There's this thing called wins and losses that no matter what it is you're doing in life, it's gonna show up. So we are always in the professional world tracking wins and losses. Goals are ultimately the same concept. So your habits position you to be able to fundamentally accomplish a win, or your habits position you to unfortunately experience a loss. So tracking them is critical. I'm gonna give you some AI tools to make this clear. That's the other thing. Let me tell you something. If I just be 100, the experience y'all have in college now is, it's different. Where life is now is different. I was the cut and paste king in college. Like, cut and paste king. Now you have so many different variations of AI, it's not even fun. Right? Like, so many variations of AI. How many of y'all use AI on a day-to-day basis? That's dope.
They clock it though, so you can't even get away with it no more.
Listen. I'm being recorded, but I got some results for that. This is what I will tell you, because honestly, in full transparency,
You even got the.
I have lecture series at different universities across the country. And one of the things that I'm trying to help universities be more comfortable with is ethical AI embracing. Because there's this misnomer that if the students use AI, they're cheating. But the reality is, I would ask you, when you think about the calculator being invented, however long ago it was, when I was coming to school, one of the things that they really would, calculators, you can't use calculators because you're not going to be there in real life. You got to figure it out.
It's there in real life.
You can't walk around with a calculator. They didn't know that iPhone was coming. Yes, you can. Right? We don't even need to know a whole lot of stuff. You Google everything. Think about what I just said. Do you know the company who produces these tools? So let's put this in perspective. When I was coming up, when people said Coke, right, or cold drink, and they say I want a Coke, they were saying Coke as a representation of cold drink, which means the actual company who created the product was synonymous with the drink itself. The same way that Google is a search engine, AKA, you can look things up with it. But Google itself is not the search engine, it's a search engine. However, we use it so much, Google is synonymous with search engine. So when you want to look for something and you don't know what it is, you say Google it. Why am I telling you that? Because it already proves that technology has changed the way we live. So when you think about AI, everything we talked about so far, goals, there's an AI tool for it. Help you create your goals, help you stream it. One of the sites is called Notion, Notion. Please write that down. I'm telling you as a professional, critical. Notion, Notion. You basically put in what it is that you want to accomplish. It will build out a structure and a plan for you. It will give you tracking and reminders, and it will incentivize you to do those things. Can't even tell you how beneficial that is, right? All of those little things into one little AI device. So, the next piece that I'll talk about that ties to this, you have a goal, you have a vision, we talk about habits, we're talking about the habits, bringing a plan to life and executing and commitment. Here's what I had to learn, I would say the hard way. And I can give it to you from multiple lenses. But we're going to talk a little bit about unlocking your superpowers and what that means. So a champion, I don't care if you're a champion in basketball, think LeBron, think Kobe, think Steph, Jordan from my younger days. In football, think Patrick Mahomes, right? Or in any other sport. Each one of those champions has something that makes them great, right? They have some intangibles and they have some external things that make them great. I like to refer to those, and the professional genre will prefer to refer to those as superpowers, right? And the irony about this is going to seem contradictory. The superpower doesn't mean that they're superhuman and extremely extraordinary, unique one of one. In some instances, it seems that way. But the only thing superpower really means is they have tapped into what their gifts and talents are and maximized them. Okay? Here's why we're talking about that. Because to truly be a champion in life, you need to understand and harness your unique strengths. Like, there are no two people in this room that are the exact same. Your unique strengths is what makes you you. That is your superpower, right? Your superpower is a critical part of your success because it helps you to be self-aware. AKA, you have to know what you're good at and you have to know what you're not. You just do. The things that you are good at, you want to lean into those. The things that give you energy, lean into those. The things that make you comfortable, excited, passionate, lean into those. Because it's going to help to curate what it is that you ultimately want to do. I'll tell you, I personally have experienced this on multiple levels. Self-assessments. I wish somebody would have sat me down when I was 17, 18 years old and allowed me to take a self-assessment to see what it is I really want to do, what I cared about, what I was passionate about, and who I was. Here's why. Because I, unfortunately, life after sports, I went into business chasing a bag. So I'm like, okay, what professions is going to get me paid? What do I have to do? But the reality is, and this may not be popular, but money is not the most valuable thing. And all money isn't good money. Okay? All money isn't good money. And I will promise you, I've seen it in sports. Like, he's making all that money. Like, why would he quit? Why would he retire? Why would this? Because money at some point is not enough to give you the passion you need to keep pursuing things. It just don't work that way. So when I say a self-assessment, I'm not sitting up here trying to be Professor X. I'm telling you stuff I've lived through where I'm like, man, if I would have known, I would have never got into things that wasn't going to give me energy, right? I would have never positioned myself in a place that was going to take more from me than it gave to me. So having these self-assessments will give you an opportunity to truly see who you are. Great ones like StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, etc. It's a bunch of free ones on the internet. I would urge you to lean into that. As a professional, I take those once or twice a year because I want to see where I am. Now, here's what I'm talking about when it comes to superpowers. This is going to tell you the things that you prefer to do most, right? Hey, are you more sensing, aka feeling, or are you more analytical and logical, right? Doesn't mean that you don't do both, but maybe you prefer to do one more than the other. For me, I'm more analytical and logical. I'm more fact-based. You say something to me and it sounds like it's how you felt, I'm a question. I'm a challenge. Doesn't make me right, doesn't make you wrong, but that's how I am at my core. And once I started to understand that a little more, then it aligned to all of these other principles, because it's ultimately going to dictate when I say, hey, I was responsible for over 3,000 individuals and all these things, it's going to dictate how I show up for them and what I expect from them, right? Because someone may come in feeling a way. Now, mind you, I experience things too. As I mentioned, I've been homeless before. I've had no food. I've had no money. I've had challenges and struggles. But the way that my mind works, I'm like, that's just a part of life and you push through it. Someone else may experience a challenge and feel a way and is not able to perform, and I am thinking about the facts instead of the feelings. So me understanding that allowed me to go and grow. Like, hey, I gotta find a better balance. Because I have to make sure that I'm empathizing and understanding that it's not just about me. Now, pushing through that. Superpower. When I say superpower, I truly mean that. You ever heard somebody say this quote? There's people that are doing the things that you want to do. The only difference between you and them is that they actually believe enough in themselves to try. Do not let that be you. Believe in yourself enough to try whatever it is you want to do. Because I promise you, that resilience, that persistency, being outspoken, right, being meek, being fit, whatever it is, your superpower is going to help you succeed. So, when you think about this whole superpower play, here's one of the things that I want to tell you. Your superpower is ultimately what's called your gift. And I didn't learn this until maybe 6 years ago. What does your gift really mean? Your gift is the thing that comes easy to you that doesn't necessarily come easy to others. Okay? It's one of those things you're just good at. It's like you don't even have to try hard, you just win. Doesn't matter, it's fluid. Your gift is the thing that comes easy to you that doesn't necessarily come easy to others. That is your superpower. Now, here's the balance I'll tell you. When you think about superpower, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a funny thing. Because just as superheroes have alter egos, you'll find your balance in knowing how to use it strategically. But here's the funny part. When you think about your superpower, you are a person who's going to operate in places and spaces to help you win. That's all that it means. Okay? So think about superheroes. It's real talk. You have Superman, who is Superman, but he's also okay, right? It's a guy. You got Batman. He operates as Batman, but he's who else? Scott. You got Spider-Man. Miles Morales, Peter Parker, I don't know his name. He got a bunch of them, right? He's got a bunch of names. The one that's the most interesting to me is Iron Man. I'm gonna tell you why. And this is like super personal for me. Iron Man is like a really smart guy, right? He's well off in his career. He's doing great things as Tony Stark's. And Iron Man is his alter ego, and he leans into the Iron Man concept to do all these phenomenal things in life. But the funny part that I paid attention to about Iron Man is that when he operates in his so-called superpower for too long, it actually works against him. It's dangerous, and his health starts to be impacted. Here's the lesson in that for me. I'm an extremely driven person. It's one of my superpowers, which means, again, I can give you story after story. I don't care what's coming. I ain't quitting. I ain't folding. I ain't good like that. Right? I'm driven to a fault, which means when you are extremely driven, which means ultimately you have a desire to accomplish things, to do things, and go. Then you also may not have balance. You may go too hard. You may not take time to rest. You may not be empathetic and patient and all those things, and so you can run yourself into challenges and problems in life from not having the perspective to be a little bit more blended. So if I'm super driven all the time, then I don't give myself grace. Right? That's something I ain't learned until like the last few years. Grace. Like grace, you either got it done or you didn't. And that's how I treat myself. But that's not always being kind to yourself. So when I say about the Tony Stark's player being Iron Man, it's basically saying whatever your superpower or your strength is, just be mindful that you're gonna use that a lot to win. But the funny thing is, the same things that you will use to win can actually become the reason why you lose altogether. Right? It can be the same reason why you lose altogether. So superpower is a phenomenal thing. It can be looked at in a bunch of different ways, right? Resilience, adaptability, all these great things, but it's still a part of how you see what you see. It's a mindset thing. It's a mindset thing. So when you think about what we're talking about with the goals, the strategy, goal setting, how to position yourself, I want you to think about your future self and what it is that you want to accomplish and understand you are the person right now who can. But if I'm being real with you, there may be a distance between the person who you are and the person who you will need to become to get said thing. That's the reason why those habits are so critical. Right? I gave the example of saying like, oh, I want to have a fitness goal. Well, if I look at your schedule, your routine, your calendar, which is another gym I'll give you, then how much of that is filled up with the things you say you want to do? Because we all know you pull out your phone, you don't even have no intention, but somehow you're on Instagram. Somehow you're on TikTok, and it's just like taking time, right? Be intentional. The same way that Instagram has a feature where you could only spend X amount of time, you get alerts and all those things, I would tell you building out your life that way. Do you know the average millionaire reads over 40% of their day? Let's say it again. Going back to that $1 million thing. The average millionaire reads over 40% of their day. You say to yourself, how is that possible? Because you have people that's not making any money that say they have no time to read. So how is it somebody that is quote unquote considered to be well off finding that time to read? Here's how. Because they're intentional. You don't have to sit and read for 4 hours at a time. You can read in 30-minute intervals throughout your day. You can time block it. And that's one of the most powerful tools that you can have in your arsenal when it comes to strategy and habits. The things that will help you be successful, whether you're talking about graduate school, whether you're talking about law school, whether you're talking about working in corporate America, and man, if you are working for yourself, I will tell you arguably the hardest thing to do is to manage your time. To manage your time. To be effective and efficient with what it is that you're supposed to be going after. So one of the great things you can do is leverage AI. Everybody raise their hand. Leverage AI to do time block management for you. So you can put in all your tasks. Hey, I got a quiz coming up. I got to study for this. I got to go to the gym. I'm supposed to go on a date. You put all that stuff in it. And it will literally break down how you can spend your day and tell you exactly how much time to spend on what. That's the easy part of like the habit play. But now all you have to do is follow it. I will tell you as a business professional who has had multiple people under my tutelage, one of the most important people to me was my assistant. Because once we built out the plan, and then we put together the schedule that says, when am I gonna do all these things? That's the hard part. The easy part for me is not just follow the schedule. So as long as I do what I'm supposed to do when it says I'm supposed to do it, the success will take care of itself. That's the importance about time blocking. So when you think about like professional development, you think about this journey that we're on, because I know we're close to time, I want to conclude with the thought that I started. Repeat that. I want to conclude with the thought that I started. So we talked through a few different things, and ultimately we're thinking about this championship journey for you. What the champion you looks like. You've heard a little bit of me speaking to what the journey has been. I know that it's not necessarily about a destination, But I'm curious to know, when you think about your goals, when you think about who you want to become, is there anything today that you look at a little bit differently after the last 45 minutes to an hour? Any one thing?
To write down your goals. Being a statistic in the right way.
To finish how you started.
Absolutely. I mean, all of those things are correct, right? And I think if you're putting in perspective what we've discussed so far, the nail in the coffin or the icing on the cake is this one. You have to have accountability. We say commitment is mind over matter. I say my mentor says commitment also means to do what you said you was going to do long after the move that you said it in his love. But who's going to ensure that you do it? Is it you alone? Is it an AI system or tool that we talked about? Because of course they have those. Was it a person, a friend, a relative, a mentor? Accountability is critical, right? So I urge you to share your goals with a trusted friend, a classmate, a mentor, or someone who can check in on that progress that you say that you're supposed to be making. Because without that, it's going to be hard to become the best version of yourself. Extremely hard. So, when you think about setting your goals, if you have not, take time to write it down. The fun part about this is, I promise you, this ain't about schoolwork. This ain't like, oh, some project and exercise. I could care less. For me, the only reason I looked at education the way that I did is I want to use the books to get to a bag. It's nothing else. It's that simple, right? So it's not about extra and work, but the reality is there's a lot of things that I realized looking back I took for granted when I was in college. I took for granted the opportunity to really network and build deeper relationships. I took for granted the opportunity to connect with professors and understand who cared and to really steal their life experience and pocket it in my present. I took that for granted. When you make your action plan, be specific, as you talked about, be intentional, put it on your calendar, so that way you can build efficiency. Have your accountability part, and the last part is commit to daily action. Remember, you do not choose your outcome. I know that may be a little bit foreign, but you don't. You choose your actions, you choose your behaviors, those are your decisions. Your habits will ultimately choose your outcomes. So, if you have, up to this point, received anything from our time together, then I would urge you to give Dr. a round of applause for being intentional about having somebody. So you heard about me, you heard about what we're supposed to be doing, how we can go about doing that, right? The championship version of yourself. I would say that that is the end of my time, but hopefully it's the beginning of the next chapter of your journey to pursuing the best version of you. Appreciate y'all.